my wife and I aren't from here. We're from the Midwest, so we didn't really have much of a network. And you move here at 22 years old, like your friends are bar friends. Like you're not, you know. And then we're busy with work. We get married. We got married in October, and in January we started grad school, both of us. So still working full time, grad school at night. She graduated, I think, right before our first son was born. I was doing finals in the hospital and didn't graduate until the following semester. And then not even a year later, we bought the business. And so we just had no circle of we have no family down here. We didn't have friends down here. We were busy. And so when I joined EO, it was like, oh man, here's all my people. At the time, all the casual friends that we had, everybody was an employee. Sure. Like most people just had normal jobs. You know, they were in oil and gas or they were in medicine or whatever. And that first couple years of being a business owner, you feel like you can't everybody you know is doing great and business is awesome. And you're like, I wake up at 2 a.m. sweating, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I'm awake at 2 a.m. sweating, and I can't fall back asleep. And then I heard a guy, it was a buddy of mine, Jeremy, I didn't know him at the time, but saw it on LinkedIn, him talking about it in this group of entrepreneurs, and it's this support group sort of, and they learn and grow together. And I was like, oh shit. And so I reached out to him cold, and he's like, yeah, sure, call me. We talked, I forget for how long. And he actually, our businesses would technically be competitors. He owns a recruiting business as well.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Much bigger than ours, but still we're in the same industry. And took my call anyways. And I think a week or two later, he's like, hey, there's going to be this event for people that, if they want to join, you should come. I'll meet you there. And went there, and the rest is history. And now when we were thinking about this podcast, I was like, I get excited about you just learn about all these different businesses. You get into it,
it's awesome, man. Anybody that I know that owns a business, I just might text them out of the blue, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? I have a friend that owns a electric company, and he just added plumbing onto it as well. And I got him onto Service Titan, which is our CRM. And yesterday I just texted him. I was like, hey man, how's Service Titan going? And just questioning him about the business. So it's very cool to understand what each other's going through, and how maybe I can help you on some things, maybe you can help me on some things, and we all go through the same problems but at different times. So it's really cool to be able to talk with guys like you and other entrepreneurs. So,
especially guys that are of a similar size, right? You can go read Richard Bronson's book or whatever, and they talk about scaling to $1 billion, and you're like, yeah, but that's kind of not relevant to the typical, 3, 5, $10 million, family-owned business or something like that. It's just man, it was an awesome book, but I don't have venture capital behind me with, unlimited resources to build this, global company. That's what I think I love about it, is you get surrounded by these people that have, especially the ones who've been in it longer. I've been in 8 years. You're, I think, 6 or 8 years in, right?
Yeah, 6.
So similar time frames. And you go sit down with someone who's 20 years in, there's no problem you're dealing with they've not dealt with.
Exactly. That's cool, man. And I also think learning the right information at the right time, because you can learn the right information at the wrong time, right? So I remember being a technician working for somebody else, and I just had that bug. I just wanted to do my own thing. I would be listening to podcasts about people that own their own business, and I'm like, all this stuff they're talking about, I had no idea,
It's like water on glass.
Yeah. And I had no idea, but it just interested me so much. I'm like, oh, what about whenever I can start thinking about those issues, And I learned from that, but there was a lot of hours of podcasts listened to that only gained 2% of that knowledge, right?
I did my MBA when I was, I think, 24 or 25. It took 3 years because it was part-time at night. And in that 3-year journey, learned a lot. But really it's to help you think about things differently. And you just do all these different case studies and things. And then I had my first year in business, and I learned 10 times more in my first year as a business owner than 3 years or whatever the MBA took. You throw in the 4 years of undergrad too, 7 years of schooling, learn a bunch. But man, nothing like being in it and being around people that are in it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. That's cool, and that's why I was, even before we talked about EO, before me and you talked about this podcast, I always just want to engage with other entrepreneurs and talk to them about it. Like I've thought about starting little groups where we can all get together and talk about it. And that's why when you brought up BO, I was like, man, that sounds like something I would like to get into. And I'm a new member, so I still don't know much about it. I haven't been to any of the meetings or anything yet. I've been to a couple of trainings and that one event with you. Seems like a really good group of people that are just willing to help, right? And that's a pretty cool thing.
I think that's the first core value of the organization. It's together we grow. Like everybody's growing together. Different chapters, different businesses, different. I mean, there's tons of people in there that are competitors. Like my first mentor in there was a competitor.
Nice.
Guy took tons of time out of his schedule to just like sit and mentor me and like move my business from where it was. I don't know how long it would have taken me to get to where we are today, but I know as a result of him and the organization, like we're light years ahead of where we would have been had I not had those people willing to sit and talk with me and spend time with me.
That's awesome. So what, going back to your story, when did you know, like you worked for this business before you bought it or?
Yeah, the staffing business I did.
Nice. So when did you know, like, or when did you start having the thoughts like, hey man, I'd really like to get into it or maybe buy it or maybe even start my own thing outside of that, right? Like when did those first thoughts start happening?
So kind of my first job, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years old, was working for my stepdad's pizza business. He owned pizza shops and his family owned a big catering center.
Delivery boy, huh?
Uh-huh. I did every job in that pizza shop. All through, I guess, high school and college. And then after college, right away moved here. But it was being around him. And like I think he had jobs in his 20s, but by the time he was like in his late 20s, he was a business owner. And it was seeing like the freedom and the flexibility. And so it was like I was young, I was in high school, and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do for a living when I grow up, but like I definitely want to be a business owner. And I think first it was like maybe I could take over his things. And he encouraged me, he's like, you don't want to be in the restaurant industry. But he was probably the first time where I realized. And even when I interviewed for the staffing business in 2010, they were asking me like, oh, what are your career plans? And I'm like this, 20-something-year-old kid. And I'm like, oh, I want to own my own business one day and blah, blah, blah. And they even talked to me at the time. They're like, well, we don't really, we don't want to work forever. We want to retire at some point. We don't really have somebody in the business that, would be ready to take it over. So, we would be, love to have somebody that we could mentor and kind of bring along and maybe one day. And so they kind of like at a really early stage, still in the interview process, like planted that seed.
Sure.
And I was like, oh man, these people are willing to like mentor me and maybe one day I can like own their business. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've thought about this before. I didn't think about asking this today, but you brought it up. So I had the same kind of story. Like I knew from an early age that like I just wanted to do something for myself. Like I didn't really understand what it meant, but I just like I wanted to be a business owner, right? I liked the idea of having the freedom to control my own schedule. And that's still probably one of the biggest aspects of it today, right? It's just that freedom of your time. But I was, I don't know, scared, hesitant in interviews like, oh, what is your 5-10 year plan? Like, I wasn't going to be like, I want to run this company.
I want your job.
Yeah, no. So, like, I was just like, I just want to be the best technician I can and grow and have a good career and, like, all that. But, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I want to do what you're doing.
You're smarter than I was. I was just showing them my cards.
So, no, that was because you're in the recruiting, but you probably are involved in a lot of interview processes. You probably know a lot of the questions, right? So, like, which route do you think is the smarter route to go? I know there's no real true answer because anybody's different, but like, what would you suggest people do?
Man, you got to be honest. Like, and if they don't like the answer, it's probably not the right fit for that person, right?
Yeah.
You want to be in a place where you can be transparent and honest.
Yeah, I agree with you now. At the time, obviously, I didn't because like I was just too scared to say it. But like if somebody came to me interviewing and like, look, that's my goal, right? Then like that's exciting to me because like you have the opportunity to train them the right way, and then that way, even if he does become a competitor one day, it's going to be the right like a competitor that's like trying to improve the whole industry.
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Rising tide, right? Or you could just like, oh no, you want to start your own business? No, you can't work for me. And then they go out and learn it a terrible way and undercut you the whole process, and you don't improve the industry at all, right?
And while you have that person, no employee that you hire is, never say never, I guess, but most people are not going to be with you forever.
Right.
And so if you have someone that has that fire in their belly, man, well, like I want that for me. Like, and hopefully maybe you're here for 2 years, maybe you're here for 5 years, and then they go do their own thing. But like, we're going to have a great ride during that time, right? Because everything's just a chapter.
It is. And also, my thoughts on it are like, what if now they might want to do that? What if they get here and love it so much that they're like, I just want to be a really high level at this company because I love it so much.
Yep.
But you need that people that have that aspiration. If you only take the people that don't have any aspiration, what do you think you're going to get in the end result, right?
Yeah.
Unmotivated company.
Right. Yeah, a culture that aren't going to enjoy.
Yeah. So like I want all of my people to want something more for themselves, whether it be ownership or just high level or just anything above and beyond what they have now, because that's the only way to really inspire the growth of the company, right?
Yes. Yeah, you need help.
Oh, for sure, man. So Pete, delivery boy, pizza business, right?
Yeah, so that through college, and my stepdad, he's one that encouraged me even to move.
Okay.
My dad did too. Obviously, like your mom doesn't want you to move, but move cross country. And I think I was thinking about it during those years, but not taking action because I just couldn't. Like I didn't have the money, so I was just working as a recruiter for the business. And I was taking our oldest son at the time, only son at the time, to a doctor's appointment or something. I was home from work, like because he was sick or something. And I was driving down the road. It's like morning rush hour, school zone traffic. And there's this dad walking down the road in our neighborhood with his son to take him to school. In my mind, I'm like, man, like I wonder what he does for a living. Because, like, I can't do that. I'm home because he's sick. It's a one-off. I'm going to take a day of vacation or whatever and try to work from home later or whatever.
Right.
But this guy's in, like, shorts and flip-flops at 8 o'clock in the morning walking his kid to school.
He gets to do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, like, the initial, like, spark, I think, where conversations got serious because at the time, bosses were wanting to retire and sell the business where it was like, hey, I remember going home and telling Morgan that night and, like, being like, I think it's the only route. Like, I don't know that I have any skill set or degree or something that will get me into a job that will provide for us the flexibility, the income. But like, I'm pretty good at this one, and I've seen them run this business. Like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, fast forward 6-12 months, they were like, hey, we're ready to retire,
That's cool.
Yeah. What about you?
So, like when the first initial thoughts started happening.
That caused action.
Caused action?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a funny story. So, like I said, the initial thoughts were probably there even before I begun my career, right? Maybe even like late high school days. Really didn't even know what I wanted to do. And my dad had a friend that was a business agent at the local union, right? And so he was like, hey, look, we need apprentices. Come be a welder's helper. It wasn't a pipeline, but it was similar, right? It was on a tank farm, and I was just basically handing welders rods, grinding pipe, like just basically pipe fitter, helper, all the above, right?
How old are you at the time?
18.
So right out of school.
Right. I mean, like I graduated in June, and I was on that job in July. You know, so like I mean, a month removed from school, and I working 6/10s. It was but it like. I didn't have anything else to do. I just wanted to work, right? Yeah. Making the most money I've ever made. And I was like, I think I was making about $1,000 a week.
All that 18
overtime, because of all the overtime,
yeah.
And like 6/10s was like our base. There was overtime above and beyond that too. And anyway, so did that. I knew that I didn't want to do that forever, but it was just a thing to make some money at the time, right? I didn't even consider air conditioning at this point. That job went on about 8 months, and then everybody got laid off because the job was done. We went back to the union hall, and they were like, all right, we'll call you when we have something come up. A couple days later, they called me and were like, hey, man, it's not pipe fitting, it's not welding, but it's air conditioning. They need an apprentice. I was like, all right, like, fine, I'll do it. And drastic pay cut because
yeah, oil field's a little different.
Yeah, because it was less dollars per hour, and it was only 40 hours a week, to start. And this was in January, so we were already slow. So that was a big lifestyle change for me at 18, 19 years old, So did that, and I'd already done some research. You have to be in the industry for 4 years before you can get your license to start your own company. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I probably decided within a few months of being in the industry, I was like, this is what I'm going to do,
In the best town in the world to do it in, right?
Oh, yeah, man. There's especially in the summer, like you're not going to be slow in Houston in the summer, right? So that's what I decided, and I was like, all right, got to just wait my 4 years out kind of thing. So I did that, and I had a blast. I loved working with all the guys, with the other company. And it's a 5-year apprenticeship. I went through the union apprenticeship, right? Great school. It was free school, right? It was free. The only thing I had to do was buy the books, and I had to just not miss a class.
Wow.
Yeah. Like there's
so 18-year-old kid can walk in.
Yeah, 18-year-old kid can walk in, and you have to pass a math test, which that's a whole nother thing, because it's like
what kind of math?
Like dividing fractions and decimals, and
so it's math you would have done in high school.
It's math you did in like 8th, 9th grade that you hadn't thought about in 3 years.
That's great. But that's the stuff that we uncovered, like when I got into staffing, where it was like this aha moment of like, there are so many ways to make a living that don't have to do with going to college. Like I did, but I has nothing to do with what I do for a living now. Yeah. Like I didn't know at 18 years old you could walk into a place and get this apprenticeship, get free schooling, that's incredible.
It's awesome, man. And like literally that's kind of how they advertise it. It's like it's free school, you pay for your books, which are a couple $100 a semester.
And you're working and they're paying you.
You're working during the day and it's school at night. So it's two nights a week from 6 to 10. So it's long hours you work, and it's hard physical labor, and then you go to school for 4 hours a night. So it's, you have to do that, but it's free, and it's actually really quality training.
So today, 2025, kid starts that program. While they're in that apprenticeship, what are they going to make while they're working during the day?
So they actually have it listed out online, right? So they have a journeyman scale, right? And at the time that I was in, it was like $31 an hour.
That's the guy with the license.
That's not the kid. That was the journeyman, which is he's been doing it at least 5 years.
Got it.
And he's passed the breakout test. So that was like $31, $32 an hour. And then the apprentice levels are a percentage of the total journeyman scale. So it broke out. I think I was making like $14.50, maybe almost $15 an hour when I started.
This is about 8-9 years ago.
This was in 2015. So
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
So today that's probably like $20 an hour.
Yeah, so I think the last time I looked, they were like $19.80. So like real close to $20 an hour to start.
So an 18-year-old kid making $20 an hour, getting
no
free
experience.
School.
All you have to do is divide fractions, and you can make it.
That's incredible.
Which I actually failed the test the first time.
You'll edit that part out.
You have 3 chances to pass it though. So
that's funny.
And then you have to wait a whole 6 months and come try again. But no, that was. So I got through the apprenticeship, and it's kind of like you don't get a license when you become a journeyman, but it's like a thing. It's like I finished this, like I accomplished it, I passed the test, like I'm a journeyman now, right?
Right.
So it's something like you want to do. You've spent all this time, it's 4 years to get your contractor's license. It's 5 years to be a journeyman. And my goal was like, hey, 4 years, I'm out.
Get the license.
I'm getting the license, and I'm starting my own company. So an opportunity presented itself about 6 months before I was eligible to get my license. And I just knew, as soon as I'm able to, I'm going to go pass the test. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start my own company. So I was making like $27, $28 at the time. An opportunity presented itself that's non-union. And I could make $35 an hour. So I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
So I went and I left the union in the apprenticeship 4 years in, 4.5. I think I had like 1 or 2 more semesters left to go. And
so you were eligible for the license?
Nearly.
Okay.
Nearly. I was like a couple months away from being eligible for the license. And so what my plan was, I'm like, I'm going to go make this a lot higher dollar an hour job, get my license, and I'm just gonna slowly.
Does the time spent with wherever it was that you went, does that count towards getting the license? Or like once you're out of the apprenticeship with the union, like it's no more?
So the apprenticeship has nothing to do with the contractor's license.
Got it.
So all I would have to do, and so what I did, right, is I went and left and went to this other job making more money. And my plan was, even after I had my license, like that was a commercial company and I was doing residential. So there was going to be no Like I wasn't going to steal customers or anything
No
like
conflict.
that. There was no conflict. There was no conflict of customers. Now, when I did get my license, they ended up letting me go because, and rightfully so, right? Like I was spending more time and energy on my own thing, and it was affecting my work during the day, right? Because like I would get off work, immediately go run 3 or 4 calls until 10 o'clock at night, and every weekend I was doing change outs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like
so
it was
dragging.
just, I wasn't stealing materials, I wasn't stealing customers, but I was basically stealing the attention that they're paying me for, and to do a really good job at my job, right? So rightfully so, they ended up letting me go just because I was basically slacking on the day job because I was really focused on the side job. Anyway, blessing in disguise. It was I mean, I just hit the ground running and just did it, man. Just started posting on Facebook a lot. I already kind of had some clients from, kind of just doing it on the side. I mean, I think I left from being let go immediately to a service call, Yeah, it was like no
downtime.
there was no downtime. I don't even think I missed a check, right? Like I started paying myself the same thing I was making, and I just kept on trucking, right?
That's awesome.
Now down the road, there was some times that I missed a few checks, right? Yeah. Especially when you start hiring people and having payroll. But that was a few years later, right? So yeah, it was a pretty cool time, scary time.
But to be able to start that young, I remember when I was like, I think it was 29 or 30 maybe, when we bought the staffing business. And I remember the sellers, my mentors at the time, saying like, gosh, we wish we would have gotten started at your age.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, interesting, because I'm, in your head turning 30, like, oh, well, I'm like an adult now, like it's not that early. And then you hear your story and you're like, man, you're starting like in your early 20s. Yeah. I mean, you've spent more of your career at this point as a business owner than you have as an employee.
Yeah.
I guess I have too, but I'm a decade older than you.
So 6 years as a business owner, and it was like 4.5 years as a employee. So, right. I started in the industry in January of 2015, and it's February of 2025 now. So, right, a little over 10 years I've been in the industry. So it's been fun, man. It's been stressful a lot, but
yeah, I got a buddy that's in the process of becoming a business owner at some point. It's like the plans are there, but it's a far way out. And he's like, man, I feel like a lot of stress, like more stress than I've ever felt. I was like, well, strap in, buddy. Like you haven't even started yet. Yeah. Like,
so I actually have a friend in this similar position. Like he doesn't know exactly what, but he knows that he has that entrepreneurial bug, right? Like he wants to get
for the opportunity.
He's looking for the opportunity.
Yeah.
He has a little bit of resources to potentially buy something or maybe start something from scratch. Like, what do you recommend? Like, what would you say to somebody that's like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm an employee now, but like, how do I get into being an entrepreneur? Like, what's the thought process?
I got so lucky that I got a job at a young age at a place where people were going to retire in 5 or 6 years. Wasn't looking for it. It's like divine intervention or something, right? Like
sure.
I just was in the right place at the right time, and had a wife who was also willing when the time was right to, swing for the fences, take the risk. Because I had to get capital, so I went to the bank. They said no. Went to the SBA. They said no, and went to them and said, well, I guess we're not buying the business. And they were, thankfully, thank God, they seller financed us, so we were able to get it done that way. But I don't know. Speaking of like EO, there's 225 members just in Houston, and like everybody's story is different of like how they got into it. I think if nothing else, it's like if you know it, keep your eyes open, because once you know you want to do it, like you want to be your own guy or your own gal and you want to work for yourself, like just keep your eyes open for those opportunities, and then you just have to be willing, when the opportunity is there to do whatever it is, whether it's, my wife and I liquidated. We didn't have a lot anyways, but what we did have, we liquidated in our IRA, the 401, like, whatever, right. 29 years old. There's probably, we didn't have an expensive lifestyle. She was a teacher, but like her teacher salary was kind of enough to get us by, knowing that like for the first year or whatever, I don't know if I'm gonna be getting a paycheck. That's the thing I think that a lot of people, when they go, man, I wish I had done it when I was younger, it's like, well, yeah, because like you don't have a big nut to cover.
Yeah.
Like you might have rent, you might have a little car payment, you might, and in that moment it might seem like a lot, but when you're older and you've got kids in school and you've got, your spouse is staying home now, like
Yeah.
the tables are different. Failure at 29 is a lot different than failure at 50.
Yeah. And it's like invisible handcuffs, right? Like, and like I've told a few people this, the higher you get in your current career, it makes making a jump to something else, even if it's not entrepreneurship, maybe you're just wanting a career change. The higher you let yourself go in the one you're in that you don't like, it makes it that much harder to jump to another one or to an entrepreneurial journey.
I talk to people about this all the time in recruiting. You'll meet someone who's 20 years in, we're in Houston, so like maybe it's an oil and gas guy, and they're like, I want to get out of oil and gas. Like all you know is oil and gas. Everybody you know is oil and gas. Your whole network is that, and you're making $250 a year, whatever. Like no one's going to pay you that money to switch industries where you don't know shit.
Yeah,
like you're right. So it's like you've got this like golden handcuffs on you now because they weren't willing to take the risk probably when they were younger.
Yep, and then it's the career, and then and also I'm not saying because I got married at 20, had Wesley at 22. I think 22. So it's like, I'm not saying don't have kids and get married young, but if you do that, you just have to know that
it's going to be harder.
It's harder because like if you're single, you're making $100,000 a year. It's like, okay, just only spend, go back to making 50 and just cut out expenses. Now, if you have a family, it's like, you can't cut out all those expenses that you have. Right.
Yeah. Us, when we did it, Henry was 1 probably. Maybe, he was like 1.5 years old, and our bills were nothing.
Yeah.
There was we didn't have to really I didn't have to go to my wife and say, hey, we're going to have to make this big sacrifice and sell the house and pull the equity out. And it's like, no, we had a little starter home, normal cost. Like there was no lifestyle creep because we could barely afford our bills at the time anyways. We weren't making any money.
Yeah, that's so that was a cool. So back to the story about whenever I got let go and kind of just took the jump into my own deal. Wesley was 6 months old, and I just drove home. And actually, one of the guys, because I was in a company vehicle, one of the guys had to drive me home.
Oh yeah,
which
that's fun.
It was. I mean, I'm friends with almost everybody I work with, right? So it was like me and him were friends, and then it's like, just a kind of a crappy situation, right? So he ended up driving me home, and then I just walked. Kelly was like, "What are you doing home?" I was like,
Surprise.
Surprise. Starting the business a little earlier than we thought.
What was she doing for work at the time?
Nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, she was
so you're the income.
Yeah, so she was working a little bit before that. She was working as a dental hygienist. She was working as the assistant, a dental hygienist assistant. So, and then she did a couple, maybe did some babysitting here and there.
But you're the income for the household.
Right.
At the time.
And then when Wesley was born, I was like, hey, look, you can stay home because we lived in a mobile home. The monthly note on it was like $450, $500 a month. It wasn't any. We had one car, her Jeep Cherokee, because I had a company vehicle, and the guy was like, you can use it as you need to. It's no big deal, right? So we had one vehicle, and a really cheap mortgage, right? So it was no big deal. I was like, hey, look, stay home. Don't worry about working. And
then daycare's so expensive, right?
Oh, and basically we'd just be replacing her income, which I have some thoughts on that as well. Because you hear that a lot, if my wife works, it would basically just be replacing what we pay for daycare, which is true. But
if you also have 2 kids in it. I mean, there was a point in time where Henry and William were both in it, and our daycare bill was twice what our mortgage was.
Yeah, wow.
It was really frustrating.
Yeah, and so that is a true argument, and it's fair, but you also have to think about this. How long is your kids going to be in daycare? And then also whenever they're not in daycare anymore and you want to go back to work, are you starting at zero, or are you basically you're spending the money, but you're also gaining an experience.
Yeah.
And 10 years when they're not in daycare anymore, now you're kind of up your career ladder.
Yeah, and it's hard to get a job when you haven't had a job for however long you've stayed home, 5, 10 years, whatever it may be. We see that with candidates now that, hey, I'm ready to go back. Kids are in school, and it's a real struggle.
Yeah. So, I told her hey, don't work, don't do this. But then also Callie's whole she wants to be like she does work for the business still, but she's not like, oh, like I'm gonna go and be and like have my own career, right? She's like, I'll help, but like my main goal is just taking care of the kids, being, stay at home mom,
raising the family.
Which nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with wanting the career, right? But then when you make that decision of staying home because of the cost, it's like you think about that, because whenever the kids are out of daycare, do you want to be in a career after that? Because you're sacrificing all that experience in the front half, right? So that's something I've told a few people. I was like, oh, I didn't think about it like that,
Mm-hmm. The snapback too from I'm used to being at home and my work is the house, and then suddenly you're in an office from 8 to 5 every day, and the pace is different, the interactions are different. It's a huge change of lifestyle.
It is, and man, sometimes it's just fun to be in an office environment with people that you enjoy working. I guess it really just depends. Like, do you enjoy working with these people? And it's funny, man, because like we focus a lot on culture, and we've been complimented a lot on like, man, it just like it feels different here.
That's awesome.
It feels like, and we had a guy interview this morning, and he was like, I was just here in the lobby. And I can just tell this place is different, like y'all all like each other. And it just feels different than anywhere I've ever worked. And he hadn't even worked for us. He was just in the lobby.
That's cool.
So
kudos to you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's really cool. Right. Yeah, we have a lot of improving on that to do, but it's like, we're headed in the right direction.
Right.
That's like one of my main focuses, like creating a place that people want to be,
Agreed. Because we have to be there. Unlike everybody else, if they don't like it, they can go get a new job. Like,
yeah, we're stuck with it.
We can't go get another job. We talk about that a lot because we focus on it too. And we have, my wife works in the business too. One of my closest friends works in it. One of my wife's closest friends work. Like it is truly like a family business.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like it has to be it needs to be a good and a fun place to work.
Yeah, for sure, man. And so anyway, after I kind of went out on my own, Brendan, one of my best friends, he came and started working for me, and we just did that, just me and him, for a long time, right? And then I met Zach, then he came on, and it's just, and then we hired his wife, Casey, and like those core people are still here today from 6 years ago, and they've all moved up into different roles, and Casey is our lead CSR. And she, honestly, she does a lot more than just that. But and then Zach, he's one of our lead commercial technicians. Brendan, he's our residential service manager. So it's like, it's really good to cultivate that culture to where they stay, because if you have so much churn, you're never going to get somebody that, like, for one, knows how the things you want, and then can really, like, you can't be the only person cultivating the culture. Like your higher level managers also have to be cultivating that, right? And picking the people you promote is a big part of that.
Yeah, I've made those mistakes in the past.
Oh, yeah. So have we.